This is genuinely insane as we have a shocking new trade report that has dropped surrounding the Toronto Maple Leafs regarding one particular player that has fans absolutely fired up. And write down exactly who that is and discuss what it means going forward as it changes the landscape of this offseason. We also have an interesting Mitch Marner update, so a ton to go over today. But before we get into it, if you're part of the percentage who aren't subscribed to the channel, this is the place to be for daily Leafs content. Your guys' support has been unbelievable. If you want to help us towards our big goal of 25,000 subscribers, now we just hit 21,000, so thank you guys for that. We're on the road to, of course, 25,000. Darius, a lot to go over today, and obviously the Leafs are in a very intriguing spot surrounding the Mitch Marner situation. More and more reports are coming out. We're still yet to hear from Brad Treliving. Whether we will hear from him or not is up in the air at this point. What's not up in the air is some of the rumors that are dropping. And also, bear with my setup. I'm still on vacation. Let's just dive right into it here. This one had fans, fans of all teams, very intrigued because, of course, the big conversation point is going to be Mitch Marner. And a new report has dropped. You can see from David Pagnotta, Maple Leafs might look at acquiring Chris Kreider to fill the Mitch Marner void, and it was followed, posted on Reddit afterwards, and people are not happy with this report, and it seems that the Leafs are going to be looking at all avenues, assuming Mitch Marner leaves, and the first real name that has come to fruition here to replace Mitch Marner is Chris Kreider, which, a very interesting player. We'll dive into that in a minute here, but a little bit of an absurd report, but it also helps verify once again that it seems all but inevitable here that Mitch Marner is going to be out of Toronto, but Chris Kreider is on, near the top of the Leafs radar as of right now.
Yeah, and we'll talk about Mitch Marner a little bit later in the episode, but as it pertains to Chris Kreider, if this came out and said that the Leafs were interested in Chris Kreider, I could see that making sense. I really can, because we know what Chris Kreider brings to the table. He can add some depth scoring, and he's great in the playoffs, right? We'll get into his struggles last year in a little bit. We'll get into his stats and all of that. But the fact that this says that they're looking for Chris Kreider to replace Mitch Marner, there's just no world at this point in his career that he's even going to come close to Mitch Marner's production. It makes no sense. No sense to me to go out and get this player. The Rangers would absolutely have to retain salary. He makes $6.5 million for the next 2 years, and he's going to be 35 years old. So to me, this makes no sense if that's your Mitch Marner replacement, right? And through free agency or trade, if that's the guy you're getting to replace Marner's production, that makes no sense to me. If you're just getting him to play on the third line and it's at like $3 million or something like that, I could see that making sense. But again, he had a tough season last year. He only scored like 30 points. He had 22 goals, and I think he had 8 assists on the season. He's never really been known as an assist guy. Obviously, he scored 50 goals before. Like, he has that shot, and he's really fast, actually. He's, quick, all of those things. But again, he's getting older. Last season, he had a back injury to start the year. Not a great start, right? Didn't play great. As the season went on, he got, an illness, something like that. He was battling that for a little while. Then he literally shattered his hand at the Four Nations face-off and played in the final game for some reason, and then the rest of the way for the Rangers wasn't good. So had a terrible season last year. Again, most of it was due to injury, but I don't like the fact that he had a back injury. He's going to be 35. He didn't have a good season. He basically quit on the Rangers team as well. So I don't think I like this move unless you're getting him in on, a significant retained salary from the New York Rangers at like 2.5 or $3 million. But if the Rangers are giving him up, there's no way they're going to retain that much salary. So again, I think you can get him for cheap because of all those factors, but not if he's the Mitch Marner replacement. That makes no sense. You have to go out and get another guy that I don't think you're ever going to replace Mitch Marner, but a guy that can make a difference.
Yeah, and keep in mind, this would be a trade for, just to confirm for you guys can see here, there's one more year left on his deal. He's a UFA in 2027. A Mitch Marner replacement. In his prime, he's a better goal scorer than Mitch Marner, even a couple years ago. But Mitch Marner is as much as fans, whether you like him or dislike him, he's a very valuable regular season player. And would Chris Kreider help in the playoffs? Yes, but you can see here, he wouldn't replace Mitch Marner, but we'd add a different element. He has 24 goals in his last 3 playoffs, 6 of them game-winning goals. Marner has 6 with 2 game-winning goals. For a team that has a tough time scoring when it gets hard, it's worth a look. He's also big, fast, and heavy. And I think if he's your third liner or even, your second liner, but you make other moves outside of that, it could make some sense. But for him to be, I don't think they're going to put him on the top line or anything, of that nature, unless they have a ton of faith in him, which I just don't, it's just never going to happen. But what I do think could happen is I don't think it's unrealistic to think they're going to acquire a guy like Chris Kreider. And it doesn't have to be exactly Chris Kreider with his salary, but someone who maybe on paper isn't quite as good as Mitch Marner, but someone who performs in the playoffs. We've been talking about Sam Bennett. He's going to get paid a lot of money. But in a hypothetical here, you look at some of the lines that the Leafs have right now. You could, and again, these are I guess, the mock lines right now because they have a bunch of spots that are unfilled. I mean, you're seeing Quillen, you're seeing Ryan Reeves, you're seeing a bunch of guys here. Most of these players aren't going to be on the opening night lineup in October. However, for a guy like Chris Kreider, he was playing second line left wing for the Rangers. You could slide him in the second line. You could slide him in the third line if you really wanted to. You could try him on the first line there alongside Austin Matthews. But I don't hate it from the perspective of what he could bring to the table. But at this point of his career, he's definitely on the tail end, similar to John Tavares actually, but with less production last year and more injury prone.
Yeah, exactly. And what I'm trying to say here is I don't necessarily hate the idea of bringing him as a Maple Leaf. I think he has great use still, even though he is getting a little bit older and his contract, is expiring. So in that way, maybe low risk, right? But the idea that would be the move to replace Mitch Marner is ridiculous to me. There's no way you'd have to go out and make a bigger move, a more significant move. So that idea is dumb to me. But if we want to talk about him on the Maple Leafs, he can play on the power play, right? He's great. Assuming he's healthy next season, he should be able to put up something like 40 goals. And playing with some of the skill on the Maple Leafs, I mean, he'd be able to do that. I would assume that he would play, second line, third line, left wing. It would help the left wing position as well because right now you only have McMahon basically, and obviously Holmberg's expiring. We don't know what's happening with that. Robertson's expiring contract. We don't know what's happening with that. So, there's a lot of spots open, like you mentioned. So he does have some use. Like he's might actually be better net front on the power play than John Tavares, right? So maybe you want to put him there if you acquired him. He does have some good use offensively. It's just a defensive game. Not a big fan of that. Again, he kind of quit on the team last year when things weren't going his way because obviously they made a couple crazy moves and there was a lot of things leaking in New York, so the players weren't happy with that. But again, he would have some use if the Leafs were to bring him in. But I don't know if the Rangers, if they're giving up this player, are going to retain that much salary. They need to shed salary, right? So, and I don't know how much salary the Leafs can realistically take on in a player like Chris Kreider. So I don't know about that. In terms of acquiring him, I don't think it's going to cost too much because of the injuries in the season that he had last year and the fact that he is getting older. Like, it's a big question mark. That's the thing. It could work out. I think Pacioretty, for the most part, did work out last year. I thought it was a great signing. He was injured through parts of the year, right? But maybe it's something like that. But you can't give up too much, and I just don't think that the Rangers are going to retain too much salary on it. I think that they will, absolutely, but I think that they want to save at least $4 million here. So that's a lot for the Leafs to take on in a player like Chris Kreider. Can he help? Yeah, but it's still a bit of a question mark to me.
Yeah, and again, last year, injury-riddled season, 22 goals. He has the goal-scoring potential. You look at his stats here. He put up 22 goals, 8 assists in 68 games, and again, was dealing with injuries. And he just turned 34. Now, you could assume in a healthy season, you mentioned 40. I'll play more on the pessimistic side. Even if it's 30 goals in a full healthy year for him, that's still pretty good. It's still pretty good for what the Toronto Maple Leafs need. But also, let's keep in mind, they have to sign John Tavares, so you'd have to get Kreider for cheap. You have to sign other guys as well. You don't have to sign John Tavares, but it seems like they are. And more reports are starting to drop surrounding Chris Kreider. Some fans hate it, some fans like it. Let us know down below what your thoughts are. I think at the end of the day, it would fit this team beautifully, but some of the other stuff and the external things surrounding this makes it a bit more difficult than initially thought. And yeah, he's not going to replace Mitch Marner, but I think you can make you can get 2 to 3 wings like Chris Kreider, and then you can consider that replacing Mitch Marner. But let us know down below what your thoughts are. And do you think this is stupid, or do you like the idea of Kreider? Thank you guys for watching. See you later.